Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 65 of the NTS Podcast. Joined as ever by my lovely co-host Tom. And this time we're also joined by, am I right in saying the best Cassiopeia in the world, Hyrav? Is that the main title you go by?
No. I'm going to step down from that title. There's definitely better Casio players out there. E-roll being one of them. But yeah, I'll take a step back from that title.
How did that happen? Is that how is that officiated? That title?
So obviously there's League of Graphs, which people laugh about ranking people. Whether it's actually proven to be accurate in your ranking, I guess, in the world. So last season I spent a lot of time on UNE. I found people on the Nordic server tended to have less of an ego in high-low, so the games are a little bit more enjoyable. And ended up getting rank 1, 2, and 3 in the world on Casio simultaneously. But I also got rank 1 on EONE 3 times last season, but I still can't. I think my EUS account is in Plat 3 right now, so I'm sure Sin will be laughing if he's watching this stream.
Cool. Very nice. Yeah, obviously now that you've moved on from that, you are now the owner of X7. That's kind of what the whole episode is going to be focused on. Just to kind of get one thing out of the way, just a bit of an elephant in the room. Obviously, there's a lot of drama with the UKEL going on at the moment with the nerd race stuff. It's just not really something we can talk about right now. There is obviously stuff being investigated, and that's pretty much that for now. I know people will probably wonder what's going on, or if we know anything. We're really here just for the podcast, so apologies if anyone's looking for an update. That's not really something, for this time and place really. Now that's out of the way, then let's crack on with talking about X7. So to start with, then just go to the beginning. What was the thought process behind starting an org? Is that something you'd been thinking of for a while? Was it just something you suddenly woke up one day and thought you'd give it a try?
No, I mean it came about very spontaneously back in December last year. So I tried my best to sort of go pro, let's say, back when I was about 15, 16. I turned 23 next week. So it's been a bit of a time since that point. And esports and league was nowhere near as big as it is now and what it's become. So that kind of fell by the wayside. I was fairly decent, I'd say. I was top 25 on the US at the time, so I thought I was doing all right for myself. But I didn't see the longevity or a career in esports at that point. So I chose the army instead. Did close to 5 years in the army at 16, so sort of put league to the side. And then come December last year, I was speaking to Ilias from Resolve and was asking him questions actually about thinking of going in as a player again, seeing if I can get the old man hands working again, basically. But quickly realized, one, I don't have the time to spend to probably play as much as these players do. And second of all, I thought, what better way to stay part of the industry, I guess, than to create my own org and foster young talent through the same system that I would have gone through back when I was 15 or 16. So that's kind of how X7 came around. It was missed the opportunity when I was a lot younger. Didn't really see an opportunity going back in as a player. So thought, what better way to stay involved than to do it for other people.
And how connected were you kind of to esports? Obviously, when you went to the army, was it kind of like esports was just not a thought whatsoever? You didn't kind of keep up with everything. And if not, was it like a massive kind of change when you came back and realized after 5 years how much, even like from a UK standpoint, the ecosystem had changed?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the UK ecosystem, I wasn't very connected to it at all until maybe a year ago. The only competitive league I would watch would be like Worlds or LEC or what was LCS back then. And that's kind of the extent to which I'd watch pro play. But I did play League, recreationally throughout that time in the army. I still did have time, whilst I was at uni to play quite a lot. So I was familiar and I kind of dug my roots quite deep into, pro players who have now gone on to some great teams. So I do believe I'm quite well connected with players, org owners, managers, and coaches and stuff, which has helped massively with building X7 and sort of networking, whether it be through LinkedIn or Twitter or those means. Yeah.
So then, when you decided you wanted to try and get into it, was the UKEL just the first thing you thought of to try, or was there any other ERLs or any kind of other level?
Did you think of the Tellier? Is what he's kind of saying. Did you think I'm gonna
Um,
go to the Telliers?
yeah, I did have a few people that were sort of pushing me towards, because we were trying to look at like the structure. I didn't fully understand, the promotion structure originally, so it kind of had to be laid out in black and white for me with UKL, UKLC, NLC, go to E Masters, then LEC, and so on. I didn't realize there were quicker entries to sort of Div 1 or EU Masters, so people recommended things like EBL or Tele Leagues and things like that. But really, that wasn't the goal of X7. It wasn't just the fast track to get to EU Masters and play on stage. It was really to build a brand, obviously being in the UK, but also being an Isle of Man founded org, which hadn't been done before. I actually only found that out after I created it, so it wasn't as though I created it to be the first. It just happened to be the first when I created it. Um, so yeah, it had come up in suggestions. I also thought we'd have a shot at playing in Spring Split when I created the org in December, so it came as a bit of a shock when I realised, oh wait, those qualifiers have already been. We've got to wait till Summer Split. So a lot of the team, they've been together for months. I think Raider, Sin, Royal, they've all been there since the inception, back in December last year, with Anonymous and Ketsuo being brought on, a bit further down the line.
And where did the actual name X7 come from as well? Is that something you'd had cooking for a while?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons behind that. X represents sort of like a variable that always changes, can always improve, always get better. 7 sort of represents the number of people it started off with. It was just 5 players, myself, and a coach, and that's kind of where we started. 7 also just happens to be my favorite number. I thought X7 was, you look at like G2 and T1, well now T1, C9, all these short, catchy, sort of memorable brand names. So tried to sort of line ourselves up with something that's easy to remember and you can build a decent brand around. So yeah, that's kind of how it came along.
Fair enough. And what's kind of been maybe the sort of biggest challenges so far then for if there's anyone listening that's thinking about doing the same kind of thing, what is something maybe even that was a bit unexpected that maybe has been a bit tricky to sort out?
I think networking definitely helps. So, speak to people who've done it before, and lean on their guidance. Really, I've been on Ilias's stream a few times and credited him for a lot of the help he gave me early on. Josh Ferner, Fern Dog, he also helped me quite a lot answering questions. CJ Shaw is another one in the scene. Shicklin as well in the UK scene. So I did try and reach out to as many people as possible, leading up to, giving it a stab myself and creating an org. So if I'm giving any advice to somebody thinking of starting, it's lean on people who've done it before, been there, got the t-shirt, and they'll be able to help point you in the right direction.
Yeah. So when it came to the first qualifiers, then, so did you say that most of the team was sort of already together, or they knew each other at least? How did that kind of go? What was the process like trying to actually find a team?
Yeah, so we did trials originally back in December, just before Christmas, I believe. I think we started on the 12th of December for trials. We ran them all the way till must be the 3rd of January after New Year. We had about 85 applicants for tryouts back then, so we had a really good turnout. Then having to narrow that down to 5, because we weren't really looking at substitutes at that point, so we just wanted a starting roster to work with. Obviously, with limited resources, we couldn't pour sort of resources into a substitute roster as well. So we had the 5 players: Raider, Sin, Royal were all part of that. Royal actually did come on as a substitute back then, I remember, because we had AB Madge back then as our support. But yeah, the roster chopped and changed as we moved closer towards the qualifiers. We felt they had a really good shot going in because of how long they'd been together prior. A lot of these teams that were coming into the qualifiers had just been put together a couple of weeks beforehand. The likes of, I think, London Esports Academy had their sort of proving grounds, didn't they? And they took that team into the qualifiers, which did all right. Resolve Academy obviously built their roster, some of which I think are now in UKLC, with like Otter and the likes. But no, I think the team did set out a cracking performance. We couldn't have asked more for obviously 10 wins and 0 losses. It couldn't have gone any better as a debut, trying to make a statement as a newcomer in the leagues. And yeah, obviously we continued that through into UKEL with the first 3 games, and then dropped the ball a little bit with the weekend just being. But I'm sure we'll touch more on that later on. But yeah,
Just about like getting the amount of people to kind of have applied, were you surprised by how many people were initially wanting to join? Because, like you said, this is essentially just like a name right now of an org which is potentially going in, not even guaranteed to go into the UKEL at that point, So it's like, were you surprised by how many people actually applied for this?
Yeah, of course. But I think what I tried to do before reaching out to people, I tried to build, well, I tried to build a brand first,
Mm.
So I built a bit of the website, I designed all the logos and what the jerseys might look like, and tried to build an image so that when I approached these players and said, look, we're hosting trials, we're a new UK org, looking to hopefully win UKL, go to UKLC, do the same, continue the progression, that they already had an image in their head of what it would look like if they were part of that. So that's the kind of approach I took. It wasn't just like, this is the team name I'm thinking of giving the team, this is the date and time if you want to turn up. It was kind of like, it looked a lot more professional before we'd even got out the starting gate. So yeah, it was a really pleasant surprise. It made our life easier and harder. Easier because we had a wider pool to choose from, but harder because we had to have more difficult conversations to say, sorry, you're not part of the roster. But it's all a great learning experience, and we'll take that through into if we have to do any future tryouts or trials, moving forward. But as it stands, I think our roster right now is solid, and I think they wouldn't struggle in UKLC if we just correct the things we dropped the ball on last week.
I think it's very interesting because a lot of people I think kind of have this thought of, oh yeah, I'm just going to build a team. Let's just get some friends together and then we'll think about what happens after that. When now, even from like a grassroots level like this, preparation is so important, and like getting that first impression, I think, is also very good, because sometimes there have been a lot of organizations who have had to kind of basically started 3 steps back because they've kind of not prepared themselves for what's happening, and now they're starting to kind of realize their mistakes and work their way back up to that point. And that is so much more difficult, where if you actually just took the extra 2-3 months, and maybe a blessing in disguise, the fact that because you guys didn't have to go into the spring and you actually had an extra kind of season, it probably even helped a little bit in terms of getting everything kind of together. So as soon as you go in, and even from the when we were doing the tier list, like, we're a bit of a fun tier list with the announcement videos. Yeah, like time and effort was put into that announcement video, and we were saying like that's a UKLC, that's an NLC announcement video, because there was time and effort put in. That, even those little things, mean so much.
Yeah, I'm not here to sort of blow smoke up my own ass, but the only sort of pat on the back I can give myself is everything you kind of see off the rift. So you're looking like the website, the branding, the logo, all the social accounts, that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and all the videos and memes you see. I do all of that. It's kind of like a one-man army job right now. So I am actively trying to sort of hand off some of that responsibility. As much as I do like creating like the edits, and that announcement video was great fun. It does, and it's increasingly becoming more pushed for time, and there's more stuff that needs to happen. It's just finding that right person that can sort of, it's like giving your baby away, really. You have a set standard that you want to keep it at. And I think we've been very warmly welcomed into the UK scene, which I'm very grateful for. I know, there's obviously some orgs that didn't have as easy of a road as we have coming into the UK scene. So I think everyone, and we tried to set a good impression. I think we've done a decent job at that, not just through the results that we're producing, but I think the branding is pretty spot on as well, of what we're trying to achieve. And there's definitely some exciting stuff in the pipeline throughout this split and into the off season.
Well, talking about some of that sort of off the riff stuff, then obviously with X7 is one of the sponsorships you guys have managed in particular that's like, well, causing a few ripples even just outside of the UK scene, like you said. I think maybe like a Forbes article or something like that as well. And we're talking about the sponsorship with the Isle of Man government. I saw that, I was thinking, and this is like my ignorance, obviously. Like, I was like, bloody hell, Isle of Man got their own government. I didn't even know that. So yeah, I learned something new. But yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about that and how that works, how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, a fun fact on that is, pretty sure the Isle of Man is like the longest standing continuous parliament in the world, that goes over 1,000 years. So, but that came around. So I know the Isle of Man has, obviously, Digital Isle of Man is a department from the Department of Enterprise on the island within government, and they're really keen on growing grassroots initiatives and growing the esports scene on the island, really. Also to attract other orgs that might be based around Europe or anywhere to come to the island because of its security, and it is a bubble over here. You know, you have everything you need. It's very scenic. It's very safe. You know, people go outside and leave their houses unlocked. You know, people don't care, and also it's it's very close community. So it's a nice training location for teams, I think, and I think that's what they're trying to push out. So for them sponsoring X7, obviously it sent ripples because we're now backed technically by the government, which is great. And the likes of ESI, Dexerto, Forbes picked it up and ran an article, which is great exposure for us and the island, and what Digital Island Man are setting out to do, which is to grow that space. And I think it comes at a very pivotal time. E-gaming is a huge industry on the island already, and I think esports is going to be just as big. You know, you're looking down the line of 5-10 years. The industry is growing so quickly, so it's really exciting to be a part of that in the early stages during its infancy, and to be the first over here. It says a lot.
I think what's really cool as well, because we started to see it, and this is like the business side of me kind of coming in a little bit, so I do apologize, Lee, but we're starting to see a lot of more like hubs kind of appear, whether it be with Malta, who are starting to do, and a lot in like the Middle East, and now we're starting to see, and it's more actually these like island kind of facilities, because they kind of want to bolster themselves as like, actually this could be something specific for a certain sector. And I think that it's a very, very smart business decision, because obviously as well, if you can kind of like dub yourself something which can be specific to a new generation, it can drive people in, as well as kind of making the island itself like a bigger kind of property globally as well, which is really, really interesting. And probably, like you said, the fact that Forbes, especially like Forbes, ESI, Dexerto, the fact that those and loads of others kind of picked it up, I can imagine initially like the Isle of Man government would have been very happy with having a story like that kind of go out as well.
Exactly, yeah, and that's just aiding their initiative, isn't it? It's just the more exposure, more eyes on what they're doing and what they're setting out to achieve. So I think that they hit the nail on the head. I agree that it was the right move, to help support that young generation that are, more and more people are wanting to pursue a career in esports. That's just the way things are going. It's becoming a digital world. Coding will soon become compulsory alongside maths and English at school. It's just the world we live in. So I think it's a good move by the government. I fully believe that, in time, more orgs will follow, and the Isle of Man will become some sort of like training hub for teams, I think. I think it's a great spot.
And we've even seen it a little bit with London and their initiative with the mayor of London as well, which I think occurred like a few months ago, I think, or it might have been a little bit longer than that. But that's even that, it's kind of, it's analysing the esports, even like a grassroots level, could be good for the community as a whole, whether it be, for an island or whether it be for a city like London as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of plans in the pipeline for. Obviously, the island has to benefit from this partnership. Obviously, with the government sponsoring us, so there's a lot of initiatives going on into the future where we might do an academy system over here and help sort of local players trying to pursue a career, which is great. As we sort of branch into other titles later down the line, which is the plan. We won't just stay in league, but I didn't want to spread myself too thin too quickly. So build the brand in league.
There's only so much social media you can do,
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So build the brand in league first. We've got a business plan and a timeline we want to follow with league. And then once the resources can come on board to help grow in different titles, we'll help try and facilitate that. But yeah, going around to talks and stuff, speaking at schools on the island about esports, and similar to what we're doing now, how to start an esports org, or if people want to pursue a career in esports, how best would they go about that? So I think the island will, you might see over the course of the next 2-3 splits, may start to introduce more, Manx or Isle of Man players into the UK scene, which would be great.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. So then, what is that kind of like 5-10 year plan for X7 then? Where do we see him in a decade's time?
A decade. It's hopefully a lot of trophies sat behind me when you interview me next. I mean, obviously we're set on progression and results come first. So we're not looking to stagnate in any leagues. I think we made that statement in the qualifiers that we played, obviously back in March, April. We were hoping, obviously, to continue that perfect record throughout UKEL. I feel as though we have the team that was capable of doing that, but we just dropped the ball a couple of times, and we learned from those, which hopefully we showed in yesterday's game, and we'll carry forward throughout the rest of the split. So full confidence that the guys can win the remainder of their games, and we take those losses, under our belt and do what we can with them. But yeah, the goal is to promote to UKLC this split. Next split, do the exact same thing again. So hopefully go to Tilia Masters. Understandably, there's some bigger and better talent sort of squeezing into Tilia Masters as time goes on and more money goes into the scene. So we just got to make sure we're prepared for that. Go to NLC. And then, yeah, if Fnatic Rising is still there and they haven't gone off to Prime League or something, then it would be nice to, fight with BTXL and Fnatic Rising at the top. And obviously, Resolve might still be there as well. So be good to see some familiar faces. And see if we can make it to EU Masters. So that's kind of the short-term goals. And looking at it, that can happen a lot quicker than I first anticipated. If we win everything up to that point, we could be at EU Masters by, September next year. So it can go very quick if we stay on track. Yeah, I think the players we have, they're very driven, they're very dedicated. They know what the plan is. Whether they're along for the entire journey up to that point, who knows? But I think right now they've got what it takes to get to UKLC.
Very nice. So, yeah, let's talk about a bit more about this current split then. Obviously, now that you've got in the UKEL and you kept most of those players together, I think, from the qualifiers. So was there no doubt then that just straight promotion was the goal? Obviously, especially once the rosters come out, like Nerd Rage, obviously top at the moment. Their roster on paper is very good. So yeah, was there a point where you looked at it and thought maybe it could be a bit tricky to go for it straight away?
No, we didn't have any doubts that we wouldn't make playoffs or wouldn't promote to UKLC, and I don't think that's cockiness speaking. I think we had a lot of traits that sort of helped push that opinion. We were together for the longest, months. Some of our players were together for months at a time, where other rosters might have only been together for a week or two going into the split. So we already had that pre-built synergy. Obviously, Ketsuo came in quite late, and by quite late, I mean the day before the roster locked. So he brought into the roster, but I think he's gelled really well with the team, and he's building upon that synergy, a lot of inclusivity within the team, and trying to get them working as a five-man unit. He had a great performance yesterday, so an honourable mention for that. But yeah, I think going into UKL, we didn't really have any fears. We kind of had our eyes on a few teams that we thought would give us the most grief, which originally we said were London United and Nox. After playing Nox, our sort of, let's say, fear levels went down a little bit. Obviously, we've got the rematch next Saturday, I believe, against Nox. So we'll see if they take something from the first game and try and adapt to that. Nerd Rage have obviously had a decent performance so far, being 5-1. But they've also played, the first three teams I think they played against were arguably the easier teams in the league, let's say. So they built their winning record through them. It'd be nice to see how they play against. Who do they play next? Is it London United they play next, or
I can check. Yeah, it's London United.
Yeah. So I think that game will be a really exciting one to watch. I think both teams that could literally go either way, and we're definitely looking forward to our rematch against Nerd Rage, because obviously we had a sub in at the time. Arcane stepped up into mid, who had a stellar debut performance. I can't really fault that. Ketsuo playing off role in the top lane, but we didn't have the answers. We let that fall short. But I think coming into the rematch, we will be fine.
Yeah.
And do you think that you'll be a team which will, you hope, kind of gets even more better as kind of the split goes on and kind of gel even more, and because you've already had that prior kind of experience, and then obviously going into and further on, that might actually even be more beneficial, because you're even going to be able to practice maybe certain things where some people are still working on team cohesion and vice versa. Do you think that you'll be able to kind of continue this momentum, or because obviously the other kind of, to play devil advocate, is that because you've had this kind of boost at the beginning, maybe some of these newer teams after a few kind of weeks can start to build that similar team cohesion, and then it may prove to be a little bit more difficult. So I just want to see kind of how you feel it's going to go.
Of course, I think you're right in saying as we get into the second half of the split, teams have had longer to play together and sort of fix those niggles and sort of bandage up the wounds and stuff, and they will get stronger. I think that's just natural. But I feel as though the teams we're scrimming against behind the scenes, they're averaging about 500 or 600 LP, so far above UKEL standard. We've scrimmed NLC teams, Div 1, Prime League teams and stuff. And it's great because I don't think many UKL teams are even having the opportunity to scrim at that level. Because a lot of those teams in Div 1 probably don't see UKL as sort of worthwhile scrim time for them. Props to Bimza, our head coach, and Old Boy or Niall, our manager, to actually source those scrims for us. Because I think that'll pay dividends not just in this split, but going into UKLC, relegations as well. We are expecting teams to sort of learn from their first game against us and adapt, but I feel as though we have enough tools in our toolkit to sort of swap and change if need be and sort of adapt to the draft and the meta. We're not too phased going into the second half of the split. I think we'll be okay.
Very nice. You said as well about like maybe a little blip in form that you guys had too. And I'm right in thinking Raider was he benched for a little while as well and then came back. So what was the kind of thought process behind that?
Yeah, I mean, Raider fell ill on Friday. Our official against London Academy was on Saturday, so he played in that one, not feeling too well. And then Sunday he was wiped off the planet. So that's when Arcane came in. Ketso's second role is top anyway, so it kind of seemed. And Omar, our substitute, is only 15. He turned 16 in 5 days. So he wasn't old enough to obviously compete, which is a shame because I think he was quite keen to get his debut. And we would have loved to give him that opportunity, had he been 16 at the time. But yeah, we dropped the ball. London Academy, we don't really have any excuses for that. We had a great lead early. I think it was like 5 to 10k gold or something, and we should have turned that in and executed it and sort of closed out the game. There was some picks that we may or may not have agreed with going into that draft, but I think we've just got to share the responsibility and blame really with that one and just say we could have done better given the draft we had. And with Nerd Rage, it was playing with a sub, but I can't put the blame on Arcane at all. I think he had a stellar performance, as I said earlier. I think it was maybe just not being used to playing with that 5-man setup in those roles, which might have led to us falling apart a little bit. But yeah, every loss is a learning experience. It hasn't sort of damaged the sort of, yes, it won't be the perfect streak that we were hoping for, but a loss was inevitable and it was going to happen at some point. I think happening earlier in the split is better than later because we can learn from it. So
yeah,
I also would be more worried, I think, if a team does go undefeated, because we've seen it with a BTXL a couple splits ago where they went undefeated, but then as soon as they lost, it's like they couldn't handle it, and then they ended up losing 3-2 to Fnatic in the final. So it's like I think, like you said, most of the time you learn more from the losses because you know then what to improve later on. Where if you're winning, and even if you're making mistakes by winning, because nobody's actually really punishing those, it's hard then to kind of train that as well. So you always have to take the losses as well as positives, as long as the trajectory is right, and you're kind of obviously if you were like 8th or something like that, yes, there's a problem, but as long as it's like where you're gonna kind of eventually finish, there's no problem with a couple losses.
yeah, I think we're very comfortable that we can make playoffs. Regardless of what our record is, even if we were to drop, not to say we will, but even if we were to drop another game or two in the remainder of the split, pretty confident we can make playoffs. Pretty confident we can win those and then go to the relegations. So it's not going to be the end of the world if we drop another game. Obviously disappointing because we're out here to win everything. But we just have to go forward with that mindset that if it happens, we bounce back from it. It's not the end of the world. In terms of going into that first loss on Saturday, I do think our third game against Lucendi, it was a bit of a rollover. I think the kill score was like 17-2 or 19-2 or something. Credit to them for their game yesterday. Beating London United, I think. Great performance from them. But because that game was, quite easy for us at the time, and the players could sort of take their foot off the gas a little bit, maybe stepping into Saturday, that mindset of, oh, maybe we don't need to try as hard, maybe caught them out a little bit. I think some of the players and staff kind of agreed with that, with maybe the going 13-0 and having that last game against Lucendi maybe just took off the gas a little bit going against London Academy, and why we didn't sort of take that lead and close the game sooner. But yeah, as I said, we learn from these, we move forward, we treat every team with the same amount of respect now, and they're all sort of exclusive events. We don't treat any team differently at all.
So if there's a point, maybe if you imagine you go on a run, you just win every single game, and then the last game of the split, you're already locked in for playoffs. Are you going to just sub in mid and just whip out the cast and see how it goes?
I haven't spoken to Ketsuo yet, but I'm sure he'd be happy with stepping down and let me show him how to play Cassiopeia. I don't know if he even plays Cassiopeia, but I'm sure he does. Yeah, I don't know if my old man hands can handle it.
See what the
I
meta
think
looks
it
like.
depends. Yeah, I think it depends who we're playing against, really. But I think it'd be a good laugh.
Let's see. Obviously, with the good results, then I presume it's a fair bit down to that you've gone ahead and given Raider and Anonymous both contract extensions, so they're both down for 2 splits now, which I think in the announcement it said it. So it basically would go, including the rest of this split, it would then go to next spring, and also cover any sort of promotion tournaments if you guys have already been promoted that far at that point as well. Um, so yeah, what was the thinking behind that? Because obviously, I think Raider and Anonymous, fair to say, have been a couple of the best performers for you guys. So was it just a thought that you wanted to just keep them locked down full stop, or is it for if you guys maybe don't make it to the UKLC, maybe you can try to get a buyout for them if someone else wants them? Was there what was the main decision behind
Yeah.
that?
So Raider was obviously brought on kind of like the first player. I think he was the first player signed to X7. Really young. I think he's just turned 17 in January, so still a very young player. Seems like most players peak at 17, from what I've seen in the UK scene at least. A lot of potential. I don't think I think he's far from his peak. He hit Challenger the other day. I think he's around 700 LP now, so he has got a lot more in the tank and a lot more to show. And that will only come with further development, more time with the team as we get on, better resources and we grow as an org. We can give him more to get to that high level. So the reason why I brought him on for 2 splits was because I saw that potential, and this is his debut into comp as well. So he, in fact, all 5 of our players, this is kind of their debut to comp experience. Anonymous kind of came as a bit of a dark horse. He's climbed to rank 1 on the US. He's reached over like 1,000 LP on mid and jungle before on the US as well. I think he's got an account right now that's 75% win rate, 500 LP. So he's climbing very quickly and making a name for himself, which is great. And him and Raider have always had great synergy together, which is why I thought it was a natural fit to try and hold on to them for a little bit longer and sort of aid that progression plan that we have in mind for X7, which is to get to NLC by next summer. And I think those are 2 players that could be very instrumental in making that happen. That there is a buyout clause for both of them, so it's not out of the question that if a team, Div 1 or even higher, are interested in taking them on, then we can have those talks, and whether the players are happy to go on, then we can come to some sort of agreement. But yeah, I think that buyout clause is more there to sort of protect our investment as we put into the players, not just financially, but for the time and effort from the coaching staff and everything that goes around that. And also aid, the efforts in trying to find a replacement, because they would leave a huge hole in the team if they were to go missing. So we need to make sure we have, our backs covered to find someone who's good enough to fill their shoes.
Yeah, I suppose it maybe works both ways. Like it gives you guys, like say, a bit of protection that you'll be compensated obviously for it, but then at the same time, I suppose the players, they'll know that there's a price that they you can't reject. Especially if you say like Anonymous is ranked 1 at EU West, it could have maybe taken some convincing to get him to potentially stay in the UKEL a couple of splits, where maybe there could be even Div 1 teams going after someone that's that high ranked. So I think that makes sense. What sounds like it would work both ways.
Yeah, I think I've told Anonymous, and everyone would know. He should. Same with Raiders to some degree. They shouldn't be at this level. Anonymous, more than any of them really shouldn't be at this level. He could be playing in a higher division, but he's had the assurance from me that if a higher team wants to come and take him off his hands, then I will do everything to accommodate that transition. He's not being held hostage. They're not being tied up in the back room playing. They're happy on the team, and it's a really great sort of family environment to work with. The quotes are obviously in that article that you can read from them, and they seem to be enjoying their time. But yeah, in their contract it does say that myself and the org will do everything we can to help push them, and even if X7 is a stepping stone for them to get higher, then I'm happy that they started their career with us, and I fully expect to see Anonymous and maybe even Raider at LEC in a year or two, because I think they could go on to that level.
I think this actually does raise like a really interesting kind of mini topic, in the sense of kind of development. And I've always, and I think I've mentioned this in like prior episodes, which I've done, is that I'm like the fact that we're seeing more long-term contracts come in through organizations, because when you kind of scream development, obviously you can have short-term development and then they can go on to another team, but to kind of like have a project going and to kind of maybe sometimes build a player, it's good to have that player for longer than one split or a few tournaments to kind of really trying to get the most out of you. Because if you have like a head coach and a coach who works with that player and kind of knows the ins and outs of that player, you're not having to do like another introduction with another team and kind of go through all those basics as well. So it is really good to kind of see more like organizations, even in like a UKEL level, kind of looking at, okay, maybe we should secure this person for a little bit longer, not just for the benefit of the player, but for the organization as well. Because then on the other side, I'm like, for sometimes I can get it with people not being able to do long-term contracts, but I'm also like, what's the point of kind of developing a player just for them to him go on a free? Because then you've done that development and then, they've gone, so what, you don't really gain much. It's not like football where if it's a youth player, you can get compensation for it. Maybe eventually that will happen, but right now it's not.
Yeah, and of course it's not like I've done this before. This is the first org I've created, and I'm fairly new to the UK scene in general. So I did have to learn the ropes, and something I was sort of advised on very early on was, just look out for players that are, when their contract ends or they come to the end of the split, they all just go off to a different team. It seems like there is so little longevity for players at teams. And I think that's down to whoever's writing the contracts for them. And if you believe that a player is good enough and you want to have them carry your brand forward and carry the org to a high level, then yeah, it's investing long term in players. I think is massively important. And it's good to be setting. I know obviously Viperia did it now up into the UKLC, but it's great to be somewhat setting an example, and hopefully some more UKL teams find players that they want to keep on for longer and do a similar thing for them.
And as in the chat as well, and I do want to point this up because Gleedy did actually point out a good thing is that some teams obviously can't afford contracts on the off season and everything like that, and I do actually understand that point as well. So that's why I wouldn't say that it's a case of all 5 players should be locked down and stuff like that, but sometimes it is a risk v reward situation as well. Like sometimes if you really do think that maybe this player could be worth it, is it a risk v reward for a potential kind of either development of what you could get for future success in terms of competition wise, or even like a buyout. So I do understand obviously that not every organization can afford that as well, and everybody kind of has to do it their own different way. But I do say that there is like an option of that risk v reward thing, which we are seeing a little bit more and more with a few organizations at least.
Yeah, I think going on that risk v reward thing, obviously it comes down to budgets that teams have, and I understand that varies a lot between maybe UKL, UKLC, or any teams in any league, and paying. I think it's just coming to a compromise that the player is happy with. You're giving them the comfort and security that they need, because you've got a lot of responsibilities as an org owner or as a manager that writes these contracts. You are dealing with their career. They're trying to pursue and make this a career for themselves. So it's up to you to make sure they feel comfortable and feel safe. And I think Anna and Raider both feel protected and know that me as an owner would do everything I can to see them on to a higher team and a higher league if that's where they wanted to go. And as touching on, that's why the buyout clause is there to sort of help fill that hole that they leave in the team. And those numbers and figures and stuff were mutually agreed between ourselves, the company, and the players. So it's good to make sure that everyone's on the same terms and everyone's comfortable. But yeah, going on what Gleedy said in the chat, it's understandable that some teams can't afford that maybe through the off-season periods and stuff.
I think for those teams that can afford it, then like yourselves, I feel like it probably gives like quite a good advantage in terms of the org and the players also having kind of the same goals, really, because like you say, with the players in general, they're after just development. Of course, that's what they want to do. They want to not only improve but also use it as a bit of a platform for themselves. Whereas on the org side, the ideal thing is to get promoted, which might not always mean so even down to like play styles. A player might have to play supportive to help the team win. That doesn't necessarily show them off and get them higher moves. So I feel like it probably helps in that sense as well, that just the purely winning and getting promoted is the best thing for those players, because then they'll get to go up to the UKLC, and it's obviously the best thing for you as well.
Yeah, of course. I think for players of, again, using Anonymous again as an example, because I don't believe he should be at this league, this is a great. Nobody really wants to. I mean, some people, but from my personal perspective, if I wanted to join a team, I'd want to join a team that I think has potential to win. I don't really want to join a team that I think will finish 8th place, as an example. I think Anonymous saw and trusted me in the project and the other players he's playing with, and knew that he had a really good shot at being on top. And that obviously shines a spotlight on the team and him being a part of it. So as you said, what better way to land yourself, play your debut in comp and get noticed than to be on a team that wins everything. So yeah, I think it's a smart move from him, and a smart business move from us to try and get him onto a 2-split contract and help us progress the brand, even if he goes on to a better team later down the line.
Mm-hmm. Nice. How much is the buyout then?
I can't do
that.
Yeah.
No worries. Right, I was thinking at this point we can maybe start looking towards the next week there, maybe do a few predictions and see what we're thinking is going to happen next. Obviously, you guys still well in with a run in for top spot, at least in the regular season. It's actually pretty tight. I remember, the first couple of weeks it was yourselves and Nerd Rage that were like, sort of like maybe run away with it a bit, but it's sort of tightened up a little bit. So let's maybe go just game by game. We'll maybe give our thoughts and see what we think. And I think you guys are kicking off the next week as well. So yourselves against Demise. Obviously, Demise aren't quite on your guys' level at the moment. I think they might only be like 1 win behind though now after your guys' sort of little slump.
3-3. Like I think they've been, to be fair, like I think a lot of people are underselling Demise actually in terms of like I do think they've been quite consistent throughout. They've not had like I think a dominant kind of week, which people be like, right, this is the week for Demise, but they've been like there and thereabouts, I would say, throughout most of it. So I do actually think that just jumping into this, it is going to be quite a difficult game. I think. I don't think this is a game which I think people should take, as like an X7 victory kind of straight away. I do think that obviously X7 are going to do it, but I could easily see like a game when Demise could win this because they aren't being talked about a lot, but they are around that kind of playoff contention, and they have been, since the first week.
Mm-hmm.
I think Demise, if I'm right in saying, they had a bit of a rocky start, and then they came on a bit of a turnaround period, and they got 3 wins under their belt, which is great. I think it was a bit of an upset with their game yesterday. I think they had the better draft personally. I think they could have potentially closed that one out. But I'm not a coach, that's just my opinion. But yeah, so it's a bit of an upset that they lost that game yesterday. They could have been on equal terms with us at 4-2. So yeah, it'll be an interesting game. I think they'll definitely bring some fight to the match. But with our draft prep and everything we're doing ahead of the game, I think we'll be in a comfortable spot. Again, it just comes down to complacency and respecting the team, showing all teams, an equal level of respect going into it, and just play our game. That's all we focus on.
Mm-hmm. I guess, I'll put you down as an X7 victory then, shall I, Hyrav? I've got X7 as well. I think it could be an interesting one, like you say. Demise obviously on a bit of an upswing as well, so it could be a bit of a challenge. The game after that then is London United against Nerd Rage. This one could be interesting then, like you said, maybe Nerd Rage having a few of slightly easier games to start with. So maybe we're seeing what kind of level they're actually at. Obviously, London United, I think, among that sort of 3-3 pack in the middle there. So one for them to maybe sort of step up as well and show that they can break away from that. So it could be interesting. Anyone that would go for a London upset?
If you'd asked me in like week 2, I would say yes. But yeah, like they've lost the last 2. Nerd Rage do look like, obviously, like I said, we're not talking about the drama that has happened. It's purely from a competitive standpoint. Nerd Rage have looked very good this split, and so I would think that they should get out a victory over here. But yeah, that's not discounting London United, but I think that London United kind of looked quite good, and have dropped off a little bit, and I don't really see them kind of. I don't see this being the game where they kind of bring back up this winning momentum, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think London United came into this and we thought they were going to be our biggest rivals, let's say, to contest the top spot. I do feel as though they've hit a blip very similar to we did on last weekend. But I think they'll come out of the rut quite quickly. I think they've got players capable of, picking themselves back up. They all seem very driven and determined to sort of fix their mistakes. I don't think they should have lost their last game. So I'm not sure what happened there. Whether something's going on behind the scenes that sort of made things slip. I don't
Yeah,
know.
losing to Lucendi doesn't give me much confidence. That's not a knock on Lucendi, but obviously they hadn't won a game. No, but they hadn't won a game.
Yeah.
They hadn't won a game. So it's like, and like you said, I think a lot of other people had like London United as kind of like these are a contender. And for me, if you're a contender, it's hard to kind of believe in that team when they do lose to a team who hadn't won an entire game that in the split so far.
Yeah, I think I would still, to be honest, having said all that, I do still think I'd put it in London United's pocket, that game. I think they're going to come back trying to prove something to everyone. They still deserve, top spot, maybe finish top 3. Nerd Rage obviously back to their regular mid laner, not the one that we saw yesterday. So we'll see how they do. But yeah, it will be an interesting match. I think London United will pull it back, and that's what I'm hoping for anyway.
I've gone for Nerd Rage, just pretty much, as we've seen, they obviously to first place right now have looked at least most consistent so far. It would be interesting though to see what happens obviously with the mid lane, like I say, especially if Galul isn't back by then that could maybe be a bit of an unknown, and see if that makes any difference. After that then, we've got Nox against London Academy. Now this is obviously two of the actual sort of 3-3 sides going up against each other, so I think this one should be really interesting. A chance for one of them to slightly put ahead at least. Yeah, what are we thinking on that one?
I think this is Nox, in my opinion, because I think that Nox have a stronger side than what has actually been performing. From what I'm kind of like just been hearing from like a couple people and stuff like that. And I do really rate, like, obviously Hades as an ADC. I really rate him, especially at this level. I think he should be, definitely probably performing, and being the one of the best players, I think, in this competition. So for me, like, I think that Nox should win this. But on the other hand, I actually look at like London Academy, and I think that they're a team which has done really well for kind of, I knew nothing really about this team, and I do think that they've actually performed very well. Obviously, it's their academy system, so a lot of these players are kind of been brought in, for development, and we've seen how academy systems could sometimes really work, where all teams kind of gel together, or sometimes it's like we're just here to kind of find like a couple players who could potentially go up in the future. But I actually think it's been quite good for them. But for me, I think that we haven't seen like the best of Nox, and I do think that they should hopefully push on and get a victory here.
Yeah, I'd sort of follow with what Tom's saying. I think London Academy have proven a lot more than I thought they would. That's not out of spite of losing to them last Saturday, but I do think that they've shown themselves to be a fairly decent team, and I think they're working on that synergy very well. But I would put it in the favour of Nox. I think you're right in saying that I don't think Nox have reached their final form yet, and they've got a lot more to prove, and I think they'll come into tomorrow's game to try and show that to people. So yeah, I'm going to go with a Nox win with that one.
I'm going to go London. Just obviously I'm a Londoner, aren't I? I've got to back my own, got to back my boys. So yeah, I'll go London for that. And then we'll talk a bit more about the London derby later as well. After that, then Munster Rugby against Lucendi. This one obviously really interesting, sort of on the other end of it. The bottom two teams at the moment. Munster one, especially, that I think had pretty high expectations before the split started and haven't quite gotten off to, haven't really reached that just yet. Lucendi then, obviously, like we're saying as well, are not without a win anymore. That might be a bit of a confidence boost for them too, to go and actually build a bit of momentum from that. So it could be quite a close one. I'm going to go for Munster anyway. I still feel like I think they've got more of the pieces that should be able to sort of grind out a win at least, even if they're both not quite up to it. And yeah, I think maybe a bit of a higher ceiling as well. But what do you reckon on that one?
I think that game is going to be decided in the mid lane. If I'm right in saying it's going to be Berry against Bertree. So I think that'll be a skill check for either of them. It would be a huge upset if Bertree was to lose that lane. But I don't think Berry was playing yesterday in the game that they won against London United. So maybe Berry's now fighting for a starting position on the team to prove himself next
in the
week.
chat saying Berry's gone.
Berry's
No,
gone.
maybe not Berry. Yeah.
Oh, never mind then. It's not going to be Berry. Well, whoever the mid laner is, I still think the game will probably be decided in the mid lane. I think Bertree has proven himself as quite a decent and competent player. So yeah, I would give the win to Monster Rugby Gaming only based on the players they have.
I've got to say Munster as well. Again, I look at those players and I think that team should not only have should not only have 2 losses and 2 wins and 4 losses. I got there eventually. Yeah, I really rate Bertree. Obviously, going into mid lane, it's a bit different, but I do think that I can't see anything more than a Munster. It's hard to kind of. I guess the only positive is that Lucende did, get the upset victory, I guess, and that could drive people. Would they have been a team who maybe would have benefited from having like 2 games instead of having this 1 game week which had occurred? Probably. And maybe if this was kind of played the day after or something like that, I might have said, yeah, maybe Lucende could take this momentum and win the game. But for me, after a little bit of time away from that and a little bit of a break and going into the next week, I think you've got to say kind of Munster.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lucende do have momentum now, albeit maybe a little bit, a small bit of momentum, but they might take that and show Munster Rugby a harder game than they might be expecting. So I'd like to think that Lucende come out fighting for next week's fixtures, but yeah, I think the edge goes to Munster.
Yep, I'd agree. Then after that we've got the London derby that I just mentioned. So we've got London United against London Academy. For myself, I'd seeing as I went
Well, you
for
can't
London.
pick London this time, Lee, because you've got to pick one of them.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, I've got to get off the fence now. I've got to pick one and stick with it. So my thinking is that seeing as I've gone London Academy against Knox, after winning that, they're gonna have a bit of confidence really going into the next game. So I've gone London Academy again, given them a 2-0. So yeah, that's really my main reasoning. Obviously, they're both 3-3 as well, so it could be quite a tight one.
I've gone for the other London, not London Academy, London United, because even though I've got them losing to Nerd Rage, that doesn't mean that I by far think that they're like a bad side in this. In this competition, I think they're a playoff team. I think they're a team who would definitely kind of work their way up there. And yeah, I think that they've just got a little bit more than London Academy. That being said, like I said, I think a lot of people didn't expect London Academy to, be performing this well. So easily, they could pick up some victories. But I'm going for London United.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Tom. I think I'd give that one to London United there. I think Blank is going to do bits in that game down in the bot lane. I know he's been talking on Twitter about how he's going to bounce back and show some people what he's got in the tank. So it'd be good to see what happens. I'll be keeping my eyes on the bot lane in that game, I think, during that derby.
Cool. Then the one after that, then we've got Demise against Munster. It could be maybe an upset one for Munster. Maybe I suppose it could depend on how well your guys do. If your guys completely smash Demise in the first game of the first week, that might make their heads drop a bit. Maybe Munster can take advantage of that. So yeah, what do you reckon? Any chance of a bit of an upset there for Munster?
I really think it depends on. I think it more so depends on how Munster do against Lucende, whether they take that momentum through to the Saturday later in the week. I think if they wipe Lucende off the planet, then they go into the game against Demise with that confidence, and hopefully complacency doesn't set in, and they show them the respect that they deserve, because Demise have clearly shown already that they're a team that can cause upsets. But yeah, I think I'd give the edge to Munster still, dependent on how they do against Lucende.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for Demise. I'm going for potentially could be quite a good week for Demise, I think, really. And for me, I think Demise will hopefully look at this week and be like, right, this is our chance to kind of make a statement. Obviously, you've got you guys in X7. If you can try and get a victory over there, that kind of cements you into that playoff race. And obviously, then if you can beat Munster off that, it kind of pushes you even further in terms of standing. So I do think that this is quite an important week for Demise, really, in the sense of this is a chance to kind of really build a lot. So I do think that Demise are going to come out of this. But like you said, I think, Munster aren't without a shot of this. But yeah, I think Demise are just the better side, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you there, Tom. It's a bit of a trick. I'm trying to like maybe think maybe if Munster smash Lucendi, maybe they'll get overconfident. It could work the other way against them, but I don't know. I'd say yeah, I'd still probably give it Demise. The one after that then is probably the most one-sided matchup, at least on paper, that we'll talk about. Lucendi against Nerd Rage, top versus bottom. Obviously, I'm going to give it to Nerd Rage then. I want to win and look better than Tom for once. He's had a good few weeks on these predictions. So, yeah, I'm going to go Nerd Rage. But is there any chance, you reckon, of any upset? Maybe Nerd Rage are really overconfident. I don't know. I think
I'm giving this to Lucendi. We've seen upsets in the UKEL before. This will not be the first upset, you know, and maybe Lucendi's just gonna be one of those teams who are just gonna beat like the big guys, you know, and then just
they could
lose
get
the team around.
maybe some. They might have seen Dusty's result in the week in the NLC as well, taking down a top
Upsets
team.
can happen. I am going Lucendi though because I think that I don't know, like Lucendi haven't impressed me at all, really, if I'm being honest, until that London United game came. And it felt like they wanted to kind of prove that they could beat a team, you know, in that higher caliber, a team which a lot of people were kind of pitting off against, like, you know, playoff other teams as well. And maybe they've got that same motivation again with Nerd Rage, because I think that Lucendi looked really good against London. And yeah, hopefully they can do it against Nerd Rage. But I am going to predict them because you got to have a good upset. You have to have an upset sometimes every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm rooting for the underdog in that one, so it's going to be a
yeah.
Lucendi
I wonder
win.
why you are.
Lucendi win, and they're going to close the game before 25 minutes.
We'll see then. There we go. Then the final game, then yourselves against Nox. If you're going for an upset there, then I'll go for a Nox upset, shall I? So I'll go Nox. What about you guys? I guess Hyrav, you'll go X7.
I mean, we've played against Nox, haven't we? So this is the start of the second round robin for us. We played against Nox in our first game. Came into it with bigger expectations for the team. I think we took away a lot of Rugger's champ pool, so I think he was forced onto the Annie pick against us, which we dealt with pretty well, you know, with the Gwen and stuff that we picked in response. So yeah, I think we'll go into it feeling pretty good about it. We'll adapt to what we see them play over this next week. And yeah, I'm going to predict an X7 win. Pretty comfortable on there.
Yeah, I'm going to go for X7 as well. And again, I think it maybe depends on how Nox are going to perform against London Academy. Like, it could be one of those games where Nox kind of really find their groove, and again, it could be a difficult challenge. But I think even like just going out of this, I think you would even agree that this is a very important week for X7 actually facing Demise and Nox kind of together, because these are two sides who will probably wanting to be competing for those playoff spots as well. So and this must be one which is definitely like not make or break, but a very important week for X7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. I think, as we touched on earlier, you know, the longer this split goes on, the longer these teams have to play together and build that synergy. So they'll definitely, both teams will both be coming out, you know, fighting for that spot and trying to get themselves out of that middle pack group that seems to be bunched up right now to make it to playoffs.
Mm-hmm. We'll see them. Kind of thinking sort of beyond the regular season at this point then. If let's presuming you guys make it to playoffs, is there any side in particular you're looking forward to most of actually seeing in a full best of 5 and going up against?
I would quite like to go into a best of 5 with Nerd Rage, in all honesty. I think we haven't yet played against them with our 5-man roster, you know, with our starting 5-man roster in the positions we picked them up to play in. So I think it'd be good not only to have that rematch towards, you know, the latter half of this split, but also go into a best of 5 of them with playoffs. Do I think they'll get finished top of the table? I don't know. If we manage to beat them come the rematch, then and they don't drop a game with anyone else, then, you know, we'll be tied top. But yeah, it'd be nice to go into a best of 5 and prove ourselves that way.
Then who do you reckon, even sort of looking further from that, let's imagine that you secure the UKEL championship and then you go on to the relegations. Of who in the UKLC do you reckon you guys would beat in a best of 5 as well and nick the spot?
Who would we beat? I honestly think, given the teams that we're scrimming, as I said earlier, you know, we're going on like NLC and Div 1 teams, and we're pulling out wins there. So in terms of, I don't think the UKLC think there are obviously some names that shine out more than others, but I don't think the caliber of UKLC is what it was last split. I'm not as impressed this split in particular, so I don't think X7 would have too many problems against any of the teams that are there. I know obviously 3 of the 5 members on Resolve who are top of the split. We beat them in the finals of the qualifiers. So yeah, I think we'd be fine going against any teams. We just have to see who is in that relegation spot come that time in a few weeks' time.
I think last split, and I don't think it's a knock on any of like the UKLC orgs, but I think like last split when you had the likes of Resolve and their incredible UKLC team, like it was hard to kind of build up from that, especially obviously with Resolve then going up and their academy team doing so well as well. I think you kind of look at M&M and in my opinion maybe London as like the 3, despite London not having for me like the greatest start in the UKLC. I do think they'll eventually pick it up, but it'll be very interesting, I think, as well. And obviously, you don't want to jinx it, you don't want to talk too far ahead, but we kind of look at how it potentially could be going, and you could be even facing a team like Enclave, who's been in the UK scene for so long, and that kind of you got to think of the narrative. You're the new organization, and going up against like a team like Enclave, like I said, who's been there, and done that through multiple UK scenes. It's very interesting to see where some of these organizations who have kind of just started and where some of these organizations who have kind of been here for years are kind of going to be, and where they're actually going to lay in the ecosystem.
I think we were involved in a very similar narrative when we came into the UKEL, and Resolve Academy knocked Mythos out of the UKEL, who had been there since its inception, if I'm right in thinking. So yeah, if we're against Enclave or Lucent or whoever ends up being in that bottom portion of the UKLC, then we'll just have to adapt and work around what information we have of them. And Swifty, who works as us, works for us, or as a scouting analyst, is doing absolute God's work with the stats and information he's providing with the team. So I've got no doubt he'll produce some great work for all of our games going forward.
Very nice. With that, then I think we're probably at a point to start wrapping up for today. One thing I obviously wanted to touch on just before we do as well was the debut of Hiprain and Jamada in the LEC. In the LEC. I don't know why I got confused then.
You were so confused. You used to normally say in NLC,
yeah, I thought I said something wrong, and then no, I didn't. But, yeah, obviously great to see them on there after Gold Ball the prior week. And yeah, it's just really good. Obviously, it's someone like Jamada. We said it a few times, but the speed that he made his way through. Obviously, he was in the UKEL not too long ago. So yeah, it just shows that even aside from just playing on the Rift, even the sort of talent side can be good place to start the development.
Well, even for coaching, you look at likes of like Hansen, who's at Astralis now, Pad, who's at Mad now. So it's like there's and there's others as well. They're just 2 off the top of my head, but yeah, it's interesting to kind of see kind of that development going, and it shows the positive of actually having a straight up development system, and you don't need to maybe have like a link between the top division and like regional leagues, as long as there is like still a strong like ladder, potential like a invisible ladder essentially, which could go there.
Yeah, I think they are kind of becoming more and more an iconic duo. I think they complement each other very well. I first bumped into Hiprain back doing like the Belong Arena stuff in the UK in like 2017, back when I was at uni. So I've known Hiprain for a little while. Jamada, obviously I wasn't involved in the UK scene until very recently, so I've just seen him just fly, from coming on as a rookie caster to now going on to the LEC. So I'm really proud and happy for him that he's had that opportunity. And from everything I saw in the Twitch chat during the stream, everyone seemed to love it. So yeah, I think he had a great debut performance. So I'm looking forward to when he goes to Worlds next year.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice. Well, yeah, with that, I think we're pretty much all done for today. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Hyrav. Nice to have a chat, and best of luck for the split. I'm sure we'll have a catch up once you guys are in the NLC then next summer, I guess, if that's the aim.
Hopefully, yeah, that's the plan.
We'll see, and then the week after, once you won Worlds.
Yeah, we'll be joining Jamada there. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Nice one. Well then, just before we wrap up, then we can obviously have a little look at what's coming up. I don't believe I have a graphic for the schedule next week, but I can show us the standings at least. There we go. So this is how things are looking right now after yesterday's games. Like I've been saying, Nerd Rage still at the top, just about a win ahead of X7, so it's still fairly close, and only one win behind Hyrav's X7. You got Nox, London United, London Academy, and Demise all on 3 and 3. Then Munster just behind them, and then Lucendi there, like we said, after picking up their first win on 1 and 5. So it's still pretty much to play for. Even like you look at Lucendi, one good week, and they're basically in playoff contention as well. So still all there to play for. The next matches are coming up on Thursday, starting with Demise against X7, and then London against Nerd Rage, Nox against London Academy, and Munster against Lucendi. So, of course, you can watch here on the UKEL on Thursday to see all of those. We're also live usually every Sunday, so you can come and check us out as well, and obviously follow the UKEL for all of that action. Otherwise, if you're watching this podcast back later on YouTube, or you might be listening on Spotify, Google, all of those different ones, you can, of course, follow those too. And lastly, you can follow us all directly with our Twitters on the screen as well. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Thanks for listening.